I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the Delphi murders, a brutal crime in a small Indiana town involving two young girls, best friends, who had their throats slashed. Prosecutors say it was a local CVS worker who did it, but the defense says it was a ritualistic killing by a group of Odinists. Here's the story. It was an unseasonably warm February day in 2017 in the small rural town of Delphi, Indiana. It's not a place where you worry when your teenage kids decide to go on an adventure. So when Abby Williams and her best friend Libby German decided to go on a hike near the Monon High Bridge in the middle of the day, no one thought it was dangerous. But when Libby and Abby did not show up for their ride home, their families began to worry and they began to search. Then the next day, the worst news possible. The bodies of these two girls were found, both victims of murder, their throats slashed, one girl naked and the other wearing her friend's clothes. As the investigation progressed over 5 years, there were sketches of a suspect that looked like two different people, and there was video of the killer. Then finally, an arrest of the accused murderer, Richard Allen. Allen says he didn't do it, and he also alleges it was a group of Odinists who were actually responsible. But prosecutors believe they have the evidence to convict, including 61 alleged confessions. Will the truth come out, and will Abby and Libby get justice? This is such a difficult case on many different levels, and it begins obviously with the victims and what happened to them. It was horrible, it was horrific. The case went unsolved for 5 years, but now Richard Allen is the one who was arrested and charged with this crime. The trial is to determine whether or not he actually did it. But once he was charged with the crime, he was incarcerated and has remained incarcerated, and there's videos of him during the course of his incarceration, which have become very relevant in this case. Let me put this up on the screen. Videos of Richard Allen at the Westfield Correctional Facility. Remember, he's not in a jail, he's in an actual prison, despite the fact that it was pre-trial detention. These videos have been at the center of objections and sidebars. The prosecution did not want the jury to see these videos. The prosecution objected to showing rather explicit scenes. But the judge ruled, believe it or not, obviously the jury has to see this. The defense then said, out of respect for their client's dignity, the accused double murderer will publish but show only to the jury. So the monitor displaying the videos was turned away from the gallery so that only the jury could see it. So what's in these videos? That brings me to my very first question in this investigation. And it's about the videos. How bad are these videos? That the prosecution doesn't want the jury to see them, and the defense doesn't want anyone but the jury to be able to view them. With us to get to the bottom of all this, Court TV senior producer Barbara McDonald and criminal defense attorney and host of the Defense Diaries podcast, Bob Mata, both in Indiana, both at the courthouse, both inside that courtroom during all of this. Barbara, let me begin with you. So you're showing videos to the jury, turning the screen. What is the scene like inside the courtroom? Like, what is going on in the moments that the jury is seeing these videos that everyone is describing as horrific?
Yeah, so there were two different types of videos shown. 15 of the videos were described as movement videos, which showed Richard Allen when he was removed from his cell and taken either to the showers, to medical appointments, to meetings with his therapist, that sort of thing. And during most of those videos, as they played, the jury was very focused. They were taking a lot of notes. As we got to about video 7 or 8, some of them were putting their hand over their mouth. Couldn't really see exactly what their reaction was, but they were definitely having a reaction to what they were seeing. And then we saw 2 more videos that were described as in-cell videos that were from the surveillance camera inside his cell that showed some of the really disturbing behavior. him eating his own bodily waste, banging his head on the cell. There's one juror in particular who during jury selection had commented that he very much struggled with graphic images and graphic content, and he worried about serving as a juror because of that. As those in-cell videos were playing, this juror was closing his eyes a lot. He was looking away a lot. At several points, he put his head into his hands and was rubbing his forehead, very much struggling with what he was seeing. The videos were shown to the jury on a very large, I believe 85-inch TV screen that was very carefully moved so that only they could see it and the people in the gallery couldn't.
Let's take a look at our reporter's notebook on this. Videos of Richard Allen at the Westfield Correctional Facility, recorded between April 2023 and June of 2023. Clips range from 2 minutes to more than 50 minutes. No audio, just video. Several journalists in the courtroom apparently could see the video from about 15 to 20 feet away. Those members of the media reported seeing Richard Allen naked in 4 videos. In many clips, Richard Allen's arms and hands were restrained behind his back. He's accompanied by 2 guards. In some videos, he's in his cell. In others, he's being walked through corridors. One video shows Allen being transported strapped to a wheelchair. Allen had a cloth or black hood placed over his head in some videos. Allen was carried and dragged by corrections officers in some videos. And then what Barbara was referencing, the surveillance camera in Richard Allen's cell showed him eating his own feces, banging his head against the wall.
And
so,
if I may, the reporters who could see the videos, it was because they could see them playing on Bradley Rosie's laptop. Once he became aware that the members of the media could see that, he did move his laptop and prevented further viewing.
Interesting. So Bob Mata, from your perspective, how bad are these videos?
I mean, they're pretty bad. You know, I mean, in the sense that we're talking about an American pretrial detainee essentially being tortured in our own country. And I think that the ones that we saw today or that were shown to the jury today were significantly worse because they were the incel. The ones that were seen on Friday, those were the transport videos where they're bringing him wherever he needs to go, whether it's the sessions with Monica Walla or whether it's the nurses to get his vitals or wherever he needs to go. Today, and as Barbara said, that I think that when some of the media was able to see those transport videos, it was because Brad Rosie had his computer in front of him because he was controlling the videos. It was kind of a straight shot, and I know that people at my end of kind of the gallery could see, and I think the front row could see. Today he modified, so he had his computer turned so that they couldn't see it from his computer either. I think obviously the word got out that they had been able to see it. So nobody saw what was going on in the incel aside from the jury, obviously the judge and the attorneys. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what the jury thinks. So, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, it doesn't really matter what we as the public think. It's all going to depend on what those jurors think. And if it's to the extent where they believe that they can't trust these confessions based on what was going on.
Well, I think the question is, like, are these, would we consider these torture videos, or are these videos of someone who is on suicide watch, who is mentally ill and is acting out? That, I mean, to me, that's the question. Is there any indication that the guards are doing anything to him on these videos that would be considered torture in any way, or is it just the way he's being handled as an inmate at this prison? Go ahead, Barbara.
It's being, I think it's just the way that he's being handled, and he was described in the videos that the media could see from his transport inside the prison. They described him as just being there, that he wasn't resisting anything, that he never appeared to move on his own volition, that he was carried and dragged and strapped to a wheeled chair and moved about that way, but that he wasn't really doing anything. the in-cell videos, he was, but that was when he was in his cell alone.
Okay, so Bob Motta, you're in the courtroom, Barbara's in the courtroom. Contrast what's being described in the videos to how he appears in the courtroom.
I mean, to me, it's night and day. I mean, right now, he seems engaged with his attorneys. He's talkative, and I've been going.
Does he walk? Is he in a wheelchair or does he walk?
No. He's walking. He's alert. He looks vastly different than Barbara and I have been watching him for the last 2 years.
So
like,
what's the conclusion? What's the conclusion that you draw from that? If he's all cleaned up and like ready to go at trial, but seemed a completely different way while he's been incarcerated in the buildup to all of this. Like, what does that mean? What does that tell us? Bob, you go first, then Barbara.
Okay, so I think the big move was getting him out of Westville first. Then they moved him down to Wabash, which is another prison, and then finally they moved him to Cass. Judge Gull finally got rid of the safekeeping order, which moved him to a county jail, which is a brand new facility. You know, it allowed him to get his footing because, I mean, there was testimony from a doctor that was an expert of the defense who said that he was suffering from psychosis from April until June, unequivocally. And there was a lot of talk about whether or not he was feigning or malingering. She was pretty unequivocal that in all the diagnostic testing that she did, that it was no indication that he was feigning or malingering with respect to any of it. So, I mean, at that point, he was mentally ill.
Yeah, and Barbara, if he's eating his feces, he's not going to necessarily be competent to stand trial. So you're seeing someone that seems relatively normal in the courtroom.
Yes, and these videos were all made last year in 2023, between April and June, late June, during that time period. And that after that, he was treated with antipsychotic medications, sometimes involuntarily. And as Bob mentioned, once he was transferred out of the Westville, which was described as the harshest conditions that he faced, his condition does seem to have improved. That mental health expert for the defense that Bob mentioned, Dr. Polly Westcott, she did say, though, that the psychosis is something he will probably be dealing with, that it ebbs and flows, and it's something he'll probably be dealing with the rest of his life from time to time when he's under a great deal of stress.
So all of this treatment and everything is relevant because of the confessions. So coming up next, should the jury trust Richard Allen's confessions?
Never in my 25 years or Scremen's 25 years have we ever had a murder client held pre-trial in a maximum security facility.
In your motion to transfer, you guys described him as being treated like Hannibal Lecter.
On Court TV.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Never in my 25 years or Scremen's 25 years have we ever had a murder client held pre-trial in a maximum security facility and then was transferred from one maximum security facility to another. Never.
In your motion to transfer, you guys described him as being treated like Hannibal Lecter.
Particularly in Westville, at least we are allowed to sit face to face across a table from him. But the way he was handcuffed and to his chest, I mean, it looked extraordinarily uncomfortable.
This is unusual. Pretrial detention is usually in the local county jail, not a maximum security prison. Then what happened to Richard Allen, the way he was kept, maximum security, solitaire, lights on, completely away and separated from everyone else, naked, strapped to a wheelchair at times because he's not walking, eating his own feces at times, banging his head against the wall. Unusual. Why is this all important? It's important because at the time that all this is happening, he's also confessing. Take a look at the confession timeline that I have for you. It's October 28th, 2022. Richard Allen is arrested and booked into the Carroll County Jail. November 3rd, 22, Allen is transferred to the Department of Corrections, placed in Westville. November 14th, a phone call with his wife. Whatever they want me to say, I'll tell them. March 5th, sends the warden a note saying, ready to officially confess for killing Abby and Libby. I hope I get the opportunity to tell the families I'm sorry. April 3rd, phone call with his wife. I did it. I killed Abby and Libby. April 5th, confessing to a prison psychologist, I killed Abby and Libby, I'm sorry. I committed these murders on my own. April 6th, God, I'm so glad no one gave up on me after I killed Abby and Libby, according to a corrections officer. April 7th, another officer said he confessed to molesting the girls. May 10th, a phone call with his wife, I just think I've lost my mind. I need you to know I did this. June 5th, I feel like I'm losing my mind. You know that I done it, right? A lot of confessions. I mean, 61 total is what prosecutors are saying here. That brings me to my next question in our investigation, which is about the confessions. Should the jury trust Richard Allen's confessions? It's direct evidence. It puts him at the scene. They believe it, he's done, right? We have two experts to help us understand all of this. Joining us tonight, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober and false confessions expert who has consulted and been a witness in more than 400 cases, including the case against Skylar Richardson. Alan Hirsch is with us. You can find him at truthaboutfalseconfessions.com. Skylar Richardson found not guilty because of that false confession in large part. Okay, I want to give you guys just a couple more little facts here. Other alleged confessions that Richard Allen made while in this correctional facility, which turned out to be not true. He molested Abby and Libby. Prosecutors say no, investigators say no. Molested his daughter and sister. They say no. Killed his whole family, didn't do that. Started World War III, didn't do that either. So, Dr. Daniel Bober, should the jury trust Richard Allen's confessions from your perspective?
Well, I think we have to be very cautious here. It does appear that he had some kind of a brief psychotic reaction to being incarcerated, whether that was due to the stress of the incarceration, sleep deprivation, interrogation. All these are factors. You know, people can give false confessions for any number of reasons. For example, people that are exonerated by DNA evidence after the fact, almost a third of them were found to have false confessions. False confessions can be given voluntarily, meaning sometimes they're done out of guilt for things that are not even related to the crime that they're accused of. They can be done because of mental illness. They can be done to protect a third party. And then, of course, there are coerced confessions that are done because the police use manipulative or coercive tactics, or maybe the person has a poor memory and the police present them with false evidence. And so after a while, they believe that they actually committed the crime and they confess falsely. So it's something that really has to be taken into the context of the situation. And I think we have to proceed very cautiously about some of these statements that he's made.
Alan Hirsch, your perspective here. Should the jury trust Richard Allen's confessions?
Well, as the good doctor said, they absolutely should not assume that the confessions are true. Whether they can trust them depends on all of the circumstances surrounding the confessions, about which one observation and one question. Certainly, the fact that he gave apparently several false confessions, or at least made statements that we know to be false, is relevant. That shows a propensity for either believing he did something he didn't do or claiming he did for whatever reasons, mental health or otherwise. My question is, you've made reference to the 61 confessions. Are they consistent? And are they really confessions? Or is the prosecutor counting every time he says to someone on the phone, I did it? Because that's not really a confession.
Right.
That's at most what we would call an admission. But to the extent he spells
I just want to make it clear.
consistent?
Alan, I just want to make it clear, and then you can continue. That's absolutely what prosecutors are saying, because some of them are very vague. There's one from the psychologist that is very specific, but beyond that, the rest of them are relatively vague. Go ahead, continue.
Well, with respect to any that are specific, are they consistent one to the next? And if there's only one, is it coherent? Does it actually supply a narrative with a who, what, where, why, how that hangs together, that states accurate details that were not known to law enforcement? If it checks some of those boxes, then there may be indicia of reliability. But for all the reasons Dr. Bober said, the jury absolutely should not assume, nor should anyone, that a confession is true. Absent corroboration, there's reasons to question it. And when you're talking about someone who has demonstrable mental health issues and made statements we know to be false, there's specific reason to question it.
All right, Dr. Bober, we have literally 10 seconds here. How persuasive is the fact that when he's initially interrogated out of custody, he denied everything?
I think the inconsistency is the biggest deal of all here. Certain people are more prone to false confessions, people with pre-existing mental illness, intellectual disabilities, people who are young. But mental illness per se, the other side of it, does not mean it's a false confession. The Supreme Court found this in Colorado v. Connolly. Mental illness per se does not mean a false confession.
Dr. Bober, Alan Hirsch, thank you so much. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the Delphi murders, a case that is so heartbreaking. Two young girls enjoying a day off from school ended up brutally murdered in the woods. And locals all wondering how this could happen in such a nice small town. But then it took 5 years to solve. And some believe this case still has not actually been solved. Here's the story. Teenagers Abby Williams and Libby German were best friends, living in the small rural community of Delphi, Indiana. On February 13, 2017, the girls had a day off from school, so they decided to go on an outdoor adventure. They were dropped off near the Monon High Bridge. While on that bridge, Libby recorded a man with her phone uttering the words, "Down the hill." It was down the hill where Libby and Abby would be murdered. Prosecutors say the man on the bridge is responsible, and that man is Richard Allen. But Allen and his attorney say prosecutors have it all wrong. They say Allen is innocent, and it was someone else on the bridge that day who took the lives of these two innocent girls. But prosecutors believe they have direct and circumstantial evidence to prove their case. And now the families and the public wait for the answer. What is the truth, and will Abby and Libby get justice? This entire thing has been such a cruel nightmare for the families of those two girls. First, obviously losing them, but then what they've been through the last 7 years to get to this point where there's a trial. And at a trial, you don't know what the outcome will be. You just don't know. And everything's been so unusual in this case. But much of the prosecution's case really is built on the foundation at this point, after his arrest, the alleged confessions that he made. Think about that. Some of the most important evidence is evidence that did not exist until he was arrested for these murders. Let's take a look at some of Richard Allen's alleged prison confessions. Told the prison psychologist that he killed Abby and Libby near the Monon High Bridge, and told the psychologist that he planned to molest the girls, but was interrupted when a white van drove by. And that's a huge alleged fact in this case for prosecutors. But also told correctional officer John Miller that he molested his sister and his daughter. So the defense decided, as a result of this alleged confession, to call the daughter to the stand. right? He's confessing not only to killing Abby and Libby, he's confessing to molesting his own daughter. So when she takes the stand, that brings me to our next question. What did Richard Allen's daughter say on the stand? This is important. When we think of in our mind of who would have done this to Abby and Libby, you think of someone who's a pedophile, someone who is someone who's committed sex crimes through the years. So the testimony of the daughter who he's confessed to molesting seems very relevant. So with us to discuss and figure this all out, Court TV senior producer Barbara McDonald and criminal defense attorney, host of the Defense Diaries podcast, Bob Mata, both in Indiana, covering all this. Wow. Let me put this up first, because I think this is significant. This is some of the most important testimony. Brittany is the daughter's name, Richard Allen's daughter. Did your father ever molest you? She says no. Do you love your father? She says yes. Would you lie for him? She says no. Barbara McDonald, what is the age of this daughter? And what was her age at the time of the murders of Abby and Libby?
She's in her late 20s now. She's married. She says she's lived away from the family since about the age of 18. So this crime happened almost 8 years ago. She would have been about 20 years old. And interestingly enough, there is a photo of her on the Monon High Bridge. She says that she has been there with her father and with her mother, that she's crossed the bridge once or twice. But a lot of people in Delphi do have pictures on that bridge.
I could imagine. All right, so Bob, take us inside the courtroom. Richard Allen's daughter is inside there. Is there any noticeable interaction between father and daughter, and how would you describe her demeanor?
I thought her demeanor was excellent on the stand. I know that she was very nervous getting up there. I think she's an anxious person, much like her father. And after she testified, which we just talked about, it was a very short direct. You know, I mean, it was basically those 5 questions with a little bit that preceded it. But then she came, and I was actually sitting right next to her, and Richard was turning around, like repeatedly making eye contact with her. So I think that was the first time that he'd seen his daughter in a very long time. So, you know, it was important because it had to come out to rebut, you know, the things that he's allegedly said in these confessions written by his therapist, which we talked about recently too, with respect to her and kind of her involvement in digging into this case. So I think it was critical for her to come onto the stand, you know, and they kept the questions brief but important. You know, I thought that they were all things that the jury needed to hear.
Did prosecutors ask any questions, any cross-examination, trying to perhaps get her to reveal something that they believe may have happened if Richard Allen's confessing to it?
They did. They asked Nick McClelland, who's the prosecutor, the lead prosecutor, tried to get into some details about how many times that she had gotten into the bridge. The defense made a beyond the scope objection. He tried a little more. She actually shut him down, and then at some point, or it might have been Luttrell. Was it Luttrell? I think it was it Luttrell? Do you know, Barb? I can't remember if it was. I can't remember if it was Luttrell or if it was McClelland, but it was Luttrell, because what they did get in is previously they had tried to get in 4 photographs of Richard Allen, and they couldn't authenticate when they were taken. So he took the opportunity to get those 4 pictures in through Brittany, which was interesting. The defense objected, and at this point, Judge Gull allowed those 4 pictures in. They were pictures closer in time to 2017. They wanted to obviously get pictures in which were more representative of what Richard Allen looked like at that time. So frankly, it was
so he looked more like the bridge guy. So his build would be more like the bridge guy, because he's lost a lot of weight, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let me put this up, and Barbara mentioned this. Richard Allen's daughter actually had a question from the jury, and the jury said, did you visit the High Bridge in your teens? She said, yes. With your father? She said, yes. Were you scared? She said, yes. But Barbara, as you said, I mean, it's almost a rite of passage for folks in Delphi to go to this scary bridge, which I would never get even close to. It's so scary.
Vinnie, I've seen prom pictures on it. I've seen senior pictures taken on it. It's a very popular spot for some.
Now, there was also testimony from Jamie Jones, Richard Allen's half-sister, who said, did Richard Allen ever molest you? And Jamie Jones said, no. Did Richard Allen ever touch you in a sexual manner? No. Would you lie for him? No. Bob, how about this moment in the courtroom when his sister, who he also confessed to or said that he had molested her as well?
It was powerful, and it was necessary, and Jamie actually preceded Brittany in terms of testimony. They were one right after another, and there were a couple other questions that were important. Their half-brother, half-sister, Richard's older by 5 years, and they had also asked the questions about whether or not, at what point did they live together their entire lives, which they had up until the age of 18 when Richard joined the Army Reserves, and then he left the house, and then he married Kathy soon thereafter, and they were spending weekends. So kind of putting the context in that he was there the whole time. And in terms of her responses, I mean, they were immediate. You know, there was no hemming and hawing. It's like you're trying to sit there and judge the credibility. You always worry about, you know, family testifying. Can you trust them? Because obviously they're biased, and you worry about whether or not, you know, they're going to get up on the stand and just say what they need to say in terms of supporting their family. But I mean, which is important why they asked the question, would you lie on his behalf? And both of them asked or answered the question, no. So, I mean, I thought that they were both very credible. So
it raises the specter now that he has confessed to things that he has not done, which the defense would argue is a reason why you shouldn't believe his confession in this case. Barbara, just on another note, we have like 30 seconds here. How are Abby and Libby's families holding up through all of this?
They are struggling. It's very difficult for them to come in every day and listen to this testimony. I think especially now with the defense presenting its case and sort of getting the attention at the moment. I do notice that Libby's Aunt Tara is coming in every day with a memorial blanket to the girls that she is using at her seat. They are not allowed to wear clothing, but she is bringing that blanket in. And there's a lot of Libby's family as well as Abby's family who are coming into court each day. They also appear to be bringing some friends with them. So it's a huge showing on behalf of these girls.
Okay. Now, still to come. What did the man driving the white van testify to?
Mr. Jeffrey, tell me what happened that night.
Killed my wife, I guess. I don't remember none of that.
You don't remember the fight with Lisa?
How many times did you hit her? 5.
You don't remember what her dead body looked like laying out there in front of you?
Not at all.
If you were me, would you believe you?
Interview with a Killer. Sunday, 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
To the killer, who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight. For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have. We likely have interviewed you or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you. And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will. A question to you. What will those closest to you think of when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing.
As we've been saying from the beginning, 1 second, folks, I just dropped something. I've got it. Excuse me. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear myself. I'm hooked back up. My apologies. It happens, folks. All right. A big part of this case has been the alleged confession to the psychologist and a certain fact that Richard Allen allegedly admitted to that came out during that confession, which was about he took the girls to a particular place and was interrupted when a man in a white van came driving by, and then he left that location and went to a second location with the girls. Testimony from Brian Harshman, Indiana State Police. Prior to reading Richard Allen's alleged confession in Dr. Waller's report, Harshman had never heard anything about a van. The only person that would have seen a van there would have been Libby, Abby, and the person that killed them. So, testimony from the man in the white van. That brings us to our next question. What did the man driving the white van testify to? Right? This is the key piece of evidence, the piece of evidence that corroborates one of his alleged confessions. Back with us, Barbara McDonald and Bob Mata. Okay, let me start. He's testified twice. First, when the state called him, let's put this up on the screen, testified that he owns property off of County Road 625 near the Monon High Bridge. February 13th, 2017, worked the first shift at Subaru near Lafayette from 5:41 a.m. to 2:02 p.m. The drive home took about 20 to 25 minutes, drove a Ford Ecoline van. Barbara, why was this testimony important and significant for the prosecution?
So the state's theory is that Richard Allen was intending to abduct these girls to sexually assault them, and that he was interrupted during that assault, and he marched them across the creek where he decided to kill them instead. And this confession that the prison psychologist wrote a narrative report about happened in the spring of 2023, and she says that Richard Allen says it was a van that interrupted him. Well, that van was driven by Brad Weber, who lives on the south end of the bridge, and says that he got home at 2:30 that day, which would line up with the state's timeline, thus marching the girls across the creek where Libby's phone stopped moving at 2:32 p.m.
Now, he's called by the defense as well, Brad Weber, the man in the white van. He testified that he went straight home after working at Subaru on February 13th, 2017. Andrew Baldwin, defense attorney, said, "You told officers you went to work on your ATM machines after work." Weber said, "I don't recall that." Police searched his land, buildings, house, and car, admits he spoke to police many times, and sometimes he told different things to different investigators. Andrew Baldwin said, "Did you hear any screams that day?" And Weber said no. So, Bob, what's the point of the defense calling the man in the white van? Are they trying to point to him as a potential suspect, or is this about the timeline?
It's a little bit of both. Initially, when he was first called, Baldwin tried to impeach him because this gentleman, Brad Weber, had made a statement to another set of officers. Actually, one was an FBI agent, an Agent Pohl, and a Hammond cop, I believe, named Goatee. And in that particular, I wouldn't call it an interrogation, but interview, he had said that he did not go home that day straight after work. He said that he had gone and did maintenance on his ATM machines. So they have been adamantly trying to get that testimony in, and went so far as they had done a TUI request, which simply means that the feds were involved, but they're not parties to the case, and they want to use some of the evidence, whether it be witness or documentary
well, let me ask you this.
from the feds.
If he does work on his ATM machines, why does that help Richard Allen in this case?
Because it means that he didn't get home at 2:32. Because what happened in the middle of this trial is the state changed their timeline. They pivoted to this van thing like in midstream. Like there was no mention of it in an opening. We had never heard of it at any other point in terms of what their theory was. Midstream, they bring up the van, and they call Brad Weber. I believe he was their last witness during their case in chief, and so that became a timeline for them wherein they are now saying that they believe that the girls were killed at the time that Abby's Apple Health data had her not moving anymore, that there were no steps further taken. So they're essentially saying that at the time that he would have gotten home, which they claim now that it was a 25 to 28 minute drive from leaving from the Subaru plant, that as soon as he goes down the access road, that Allen saw it, that he pivoted from, with the concept of sexually assaulting the girls to killing the girls, and that this van was the thing that ties it all together. And now that's a fact that they claim that they have through the confessions that only the killer would know. So it became critical to them. So obviously for the defense, they have to try to destroy his timeline. If he went and serviced his ATMs, he's not there at 2:32. He's there after 3 o'clock.
Okay, Barbara, through the years, had his name come up before? Had the white van come up before?
There are some social media posts from years ago showing people talking about a white van. Brad Weber has been talked about. The defense said in one of their questions that he was a suspect at one point. I know that he was looked into, as most people who lived around the creek area and the bridge area were. But he did have this alibi being at work down in Subaru up until 2:02 p.m. So that would make it difficult for him to be on the bridge at 2:13 in Libby's video. But also he had a gun with him that day, and it was a Sig Sauer, the same model and caliber as Richard Allen has. And when they did the initial testing on his gun, it could not be excluded. So there's been a lot of chatter around Brad Weber for a long time.
Barbara McDonald, Bob Motta, you're really your eyes and ears inside the courtroom. We really appreciate it so much. Thank you. You know, a trial is a search for the truth. All the evidence must be tested and scrutinized during the trial. And each defendant should be able to present a defense. That's the only way that our system works. Regardless of what you or I believe happened here, at a minimum, the jury should have access to all the facts wherever they lead. Let's just hope, because we don't see it, that that is happening in this case. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.